Think of successful adaptations, one that always comes to mind is the Dragon Ball franchise. Starting off as a manga series, it quickly became more well known as an anime series, especially in the West. This is due to the series' high level of action and martial arts and over-the-top explosions and stuff. The series begins with Dragon Ball, which was a fun series that aired in 1984 till 1989, which was then followed by a successful show Dragon Ball Z from 89 to 96, which was then followed by less successful Dragon Ball GT from 96 to 97. Then about 20 years later, we got Dragon Ball Super from 2015 to 2019, and most recently Dragon Ball Daima, which just ended this year. Now, in terms of merchandise, original Dragon Ball had pretty slim pickings, but once Dragon Ball Z started, we started to get figures from companies like Bandai and AB Group, which were pretty decent 5-inch scale figures, which would then can be continued by Irwin once the series hit America, and then be followed by Jakks Pacific, which added more articulation. Then we went back to Bandai and we created the SH FIGUARTS collection, which is the best Dragon Ball toy line by most people's standards. However, one common one that is excluded is the Dragon Stars toy line, which I really like, so I wanted to take a retrospective look at all of the figures and see if it is truly worth being considered more than just that cheap Dragon Ball line. And hopefully by the end we can see if my assessment in the title is right and that this might be a better line than FIGUARTS. This toy line was meant to tie in with the Dragon Ball Super line, and as such all the packages display it, as you can see on the top, and the names of the characters are on the bottom. On the back you see which figures are in the wave assortment along with which ones come with the Build-A-Figure pieces. Each figure will include 2 alternate hands and a Build-A-Figure piece for the early waves. So sometimes other accessories are included for certain characters. Wave 1 begins with Goku himself, and this figure looks alright, though the face is a little off compared to how it looks in the anime artwork. Now, I should mention this figure was also released as a Comic-Con exclusive, which did give them a different color scheme, and also a Dragon Ball FighterZ clone Goku version, which is the version I have and will be showing. As for the articulation, it is pretty decent. I would say around McFarlane level, where it's not the best, but you get enough to get a few good poses out of it. Main problem is that the legs are a little limited just due to the way the hips are mounted, but you can still get some alright poses, and overall I'd say this figure is okay, but I'd recommend you get the FighterZ version because it is more unique and there is a ton of Super Saiyan Gokus in this line coming up. Now, in the same wave, the Goku also got reissued with a new head to try and look like his base form. However, the figure is the exact same, so I customized mine into a Super Saiyan God to make it more unique because there will be a ton of base form Gokus in this line. So yeah, not really worth getting unless you want the Build-A-Figure. Vegeta was also in this first wave, and like Goku, he looks pretty alright, though there is something a little off, mostly with the face, especially compared to how it looks in the anime. As such, I made a Super Saiyan God version, because there will be lots of Vegetas in this line going forward, but the articulation is pretty similar to Goku, but a little better because of the thinner outfit. And this was also repainted into Super Saiyan Vegeta in the exact same way, who looks about the same as the normal Vegeta. And like with Goku, he did have a FighterZ variant based on the clones from that game, and I prefer this color scheme and own it. And yeah, the figure is still identical to the Super Saiyan and normal versions because they're just repaints of each other. So if you had to get one, I'd recommend trying to track down a fighter's version like I have. For antagonist, Beerus was in this first wave, and he actually looks very close to how he looks in the anime, which is a nice improvement compared to Goku and Vegeta. Speaking of improvement, the articulation is a lot better on him, except for a bicep swivel, as he has none for whatever reason. But beyond that, the articulation allows for a lot more range than what Goku and Vegeta had, as he actually has a proper ab crunch, so even though it's limited, and his tail can rotate, which is a nice little bonus. So yeah, overall, Beerus, because of the lack of a bicep swivel, is a little hard to pose, but he does make a decent stand-in for a FIGUARTS Beerus if you are having trouble tracking one. Now, the final figure in the wave is Final Form Frieza, and this figure looks really cool, especially since they added some blue highlights to his skin, which, while not exactly accurate to the anime, does look very cool. Now, like with Goku and Vegeta, he does have a FighterZ clone variant, which I wish I had. Instead, mine is just slightly customized with some black lines to give it a more manga kind of look. As for the articulation, it's the best so far. The joints are super smooth. He actually has a bicep swivel, and his legs, while still limited, are pretty alright overall. And his tail is multi-jointed, as it actually has a base pivot, a spin, and a piece of rotation near the end. So yeah, Frieza is definitely the best figure in the first wave. Once you collect all the figures, you can assemble the Shenron statue. The statue is pretty cool looking, though, like I said, it is just a statue, but at least you get the display stand, which does look nice. However, instead of tracking down all these figures, I actually recommend you go to the Comic-Con version, which is nice and is all in gold, which makes it a lot more unique than a normal Shenron statue. But as for the first wave in general, while there is definitely some growing pains, does show some trends that will be seen later on, namely that the villain characters will far surpass the hero characters in terms of how much fun their action figures are. But with all that said, let's move on to Wave 2 and see if things pick up from here. Wave 2 has a lot more characters directly related to Dragon Ball Super, more specifically the 2 arcs that followed the Golden Frieza saga, that being the Universe 6 arc and the Goku Black arc. Starting the wave off, we have Blue Goku in the Whis training outfit. And the figure does actually look pretty nice and captures the look a lot better than the Wave 1 figures for Goku I did felt. As for the articulation, it is about the same as the Wave 1 figure, but a little more stiff, which is unfortunate. But the figure's body looks a lot nicer. There's no more like squared chest. He actually has like proper body proportions than the original. But it does suck about the articulation loss. Now, as for this figure, I recommend you get this angry variant that is included in the 2-pack, as that actually comes with a Kamehameha Blast effect, which adds a lot to this figure. The next figure in the line was the first come with an accessory, that being Super Saiyan Trunks. The figure looks pretty good to how he looks in the anime, though some shades are slightly off. Now, I do have this 2-pack variant, which I'll talk about more in a second, but figures are identical. As for the articulation, it's pretty similar to the Goku we just talked about, as the baggier pants do limit the legs a lot compared to something more form-fitting. But it's still not terrible, and you can still get some decent poses, especially if you have the 2-pack version, as that comes with the Spirit Sword accessory. But as for the standard release, it's still pretty good, but I'd still definitely recommend the 2-pack release. This character was one that got everyone excited, as he did not have a FIGUARTS release to this point. It is hit. Now, the figure looks very accurate to how the character looks in the anime, basically being borderline perfect. The articulation is about this, it's a little bit better than Goku and Trunks, I'd say. The one major problem is that the trench coats do not move, so the leg articulation is a little hard to use. But it's fine, you can still get him to look pretty decent, especially if you put him next to a Goku, so yeah, I definitely recommend you get one of these. The next figure in the line is Blue Vegeta. The figure looks very cool and has nice shiny blue metallic hair, which makes him look very accurate to how the character looks in the anime. As for the articulation, it is pretty similar to Goku, but due to Vegeta's more form-fitting outfit, it works a lot better than it did on the Goku figure. One sad thing is that the figure is a bit too tall compared to Goku, but it's still an alright figure overall. When talking about the best figures from this wave, we gotta mention Goku Black Rosé. The figure looks very accurate to how the character looks in Dragon Ball Super, and also is one of the first figures to come with an energy hand. As for the articulation, the energy hand surprisingly does not affect it, as you can still use the wrist socket, which I was shocked to find out about. However, the figure does suffer in one major area, and that is with the knees. When you bend the knees, it looks really bad. But beyond that, the articulation is pretty standard for the line, and it's still pretty decent. However, instead of getting this figure, I recommend you get the Deluxe Power-Up Pack version, as that comes with a charge effect piece, as well as a purple background and a scythe for the series. However, you can't have Goku Black without his other half, that being Zamasu. The figure comes with an energy blade just like the previous figure, and it plugs in just the same. As for the articulation, it is a lot more limited than Goku Black, just due to the way the character is designed, but he still gets the point across. And I forgot to mention that this was Zamasu's first action figure, as FIGUARTS did not have one yet, so this was a great figure for the time, and I'd still recommend him, as it's a pretty good figure of Zamasu. Now, when you collect all the figures in the wave, you can assemble the fused Zamasu, or you could just buy the Trunks 2-pack that I mentioned earlier, which is the exact same figure, minus a slightly different. As the original has a smirk, while this one has a grit-ing expression. Articulation is pretty similar to the standard Zamasu, except for the purple arm, which only has an elbow and the universal swivel. Beyond that, it is very identical. But still, I'd say this is a very good Build-A-Figure, and much better than the Shenron, as this is an actual figure. And overall, this second wave is pretty good. And I'd say it's a definite improvement over the first wave, but let's see if the Wave 3 is any better. Wave 3 has figures predominantly based on the Tournament of Power. The one exception is the Kaioken Blue Goku, which is actually just a repaint of the first Blue Goku. Though the figure does look pretty nice in this color scheme, especially like the hair color, as that looks really cool. But overall, it's the same figure. If you liked it before, you'll like it now. If not, I'd still say this one's better than the previous Blue Goku. While further proving that the villains are the best in the line, we got Jiren. The figure looks very cool and very accurate to how he looks in the source material. As for the articulation, the figure has pretty good movement. He actually can look up, which is surprising. Beyond that, the articulation is pretty standard for one of the more form-fitting characters. As for the release, though, you can get a Screaming Head variant in a 2-pack that I will talk about very later in this video, as that is for a while away. And there was also this Comic-Con version, which actually looks really cool with the shell shading. So I'd recommend the Comic-Con version if you can get one, but any of these Jirens will do. He's just a really good figure. The next character was another one FIGUARTS ever made, that's Super Saiyan Kaba, and he's pretty thin, but that's accurate to the source material. As for the articulation, due to the thin nature, he's got the only single jointed elbows and knees, but beyond that's pretty standard. Overall, it's an okay figure. I'd say it's an alright. Following Kaba, we got Mystic Gohan, who did also get a Fighter Z clone variant, the final one in the wave. As for the articulation, it is really great. This figure, despite being in such baggy clothing, can actually move very well. It's got double jointed elbows and an ab crunch that actually kind of works. But yeah, this body mold will be used a lot going forward, and I'm happy they chose a good one to use going forward. So yeah, I'd recommend you pick one up. Now as for a villain, we got Golden Frieza, and he looks amazing, especially with that super bright, shiny gold paint, which is actually very accurate to how he looks in the anime. The articulation is basically identical to the standard Frieza, but with better tolerances due to the more bulky frame that this mold has, as this actually is a unique mold. Now, this figure is already pretty good, but if you want one, I recommend you get this variant with the screaming face that comes in a 2-pack with the Blue Goku I mentioned earlier, as it also comes with a Death Ball accessory, which makes the figure even better than it already was. This figure in the wave was Blue Vegeta, and he looks really nice and comes with a Spirit Sword accessory that plugs into his hand, which is cool. The articulation is very identical to Mystic Gohan because it shares a body mold with him. But yeah, it's a great mold either way, so I'd still recommend you get one. So yeah, great wave overall. Let's see what happens. If you collect all the figures in the line, you get to build Kale, and this is her very first action figure, and she looks very accurate to the source material, and as of now, you won't have a choice but to grab every figure. Her articulation, despite being such a much beefier gal, is actually pretty decent for what it is, though her skirt limits the legs. But yeah, I'd say this is a really good Build-A-Figure, and overall, this wave is the best one so far. Let's hope this continues. Wave 4 is sadly what I refer to as a lazy wave, as all the figures are reused. Like, here's Vegeta with a new head, Super Saiyan Gohan, which is the last Gohan but with a new head, Base Form Trunks, which is the same as Super Saiyan Trunks with a new head, Vegito is the same as Blue Vegeta but with a new head, and Goku Black is the same as Goku Black Rose but with a new head. One exception in this wave is this Ultra Instinct Goku, who does actually look really nice and is technically a new mold, though it is very similar to the Gohan body mold that has been used already a few times. As you see, mine has been a little customized just to make him look nicer. But yeah, overall, this is still a really good figure, especially if you pair him next to Jiren, which, speaking of which, this was the other figure in that Comic-Con 2-pack with that Jiren, and I recommend that version the most. The Build-A-Figure, though, is what made this line worth it, as Z Broly, and oh, that looks good. So there is this Comic-Con version that looks even better, but it's expensive, so I recommend getting this 2-pack version that has a new face and the energy green effect. Comes in a 2-pack with a battle damage Super Saiyan Goku, which uses the Ultra Instinct body mold. As for the articulation, it's pretty good for Dragon Star standards. It's got all the good joints in there, and you can feel the heft on him because he's a really big guy. So yeah, I definitely recommend you at least grab the 2-pack version for this Broly because it's not worth building him, unfortunately. And with that, Broly marks our final Build-A-Figure in the line, so let's see what Wave 5 has to offer going forward. Following Wave had some big changes, as Dragon Ball Super had ended by this point, so they were allowed to expand outside the Dragon Ball Super cast. For example, up first is First Form Frieza, form we mostly see in Dragon Ball Z. Now this figure looks very accurate to the source material, which is great because FIGUARTS did not have one at this time. As for the articulation, it's some of the best in the line. though his shoulders are limited by the shoulder pads, but the hips and feet especially pose like a dream. So yeah, overall I would recommend this Frieza highly. Though not this version, because a few waves later we got this version, which came with a death ball accessory and a maniacal laughing face, which is a lot more characterful and a lot more play value for this character. So yeah, either or though is fine. But if you had to pick, get the one with the death ball. Following first form Frieza, next was Piccolo, another character that was a long time coming. Now this figure looks really nice, and as for the articulation, it is actually very similar to the Gohan body mold that we saw previously in terms of its movement, which is not a bad thing because that was a good mold. And yeah, another thing I really like about this Piccolo is that he comes with his special beam cannon hand, which makes this figure a lot closer to, you know, the kind of moments from the Saiyan saga. And as such, I've labeled this as a Dragon Ball Z figure. But regardless, you guys should definitely try and track one down if you don't have one already. However, what was following Piccolo was what was truly exciting, because it's Super Saiyan 4 Goku from the Dragon Ball GT series. The figure looks very accurate to the look from that show. The articulation is really good, despite not using that Gohan body mold. It feels very similar to it, and in some cases even better, namely in the hip movement. But yeah, I'd say Super Saiyan 4 Goku is definitely one to track down if you're collecting this line, because the FIGUARTS Super Saiyan 4 Goku is kind of pricey nowadays. Following Super Saiyan 4 Goku, let's talk quickly about Super Saiyan 3 Goku. Now, the figure has the hair removed in the package, but that's fine. Super Saiyan 4 Goku had his tail removed in the package too. The articulation is identical to the Gohan body mold, because this is the first time that Goku is on that body mold. But yeah, it's a good figure overall, though it can be a little hard to stand just with the hair. And also, I should note there was a Target exclusive reissue of it that made the hair transparent. So if you want clear yellow hair, go with that one. If not, stick with the original. Either is okay though. Then we got Android 17 from the Cell Saga, which is a very odd choice, but the figure does include an above average set of hands, which is very nice. As for the articulation, it is shockingly really good, including full elbow bends and full knee bends. And the hips don't even have much problem, which is very rare for this line. Honestly, 17 might be the most posable figure in the line so far. And yeah, I definitely recommend him, especially since normal FIGUARTS Android 17 is usually very pricey online. However, the next figure was the best of the wave, and that was Perfect Cell. This figure looks pretty much, well, perfect. In fact, I think it surpasses FIGUARTS in terms of accuracy. As for the articulation, it's very good in the upper body, though sadly the lower body is pretty bad. It's mostly just due to the way the legs are shaped, but you can still get enough to get some really cool looking poses, especially if you add some effects on your own. But speaking of effects, he did just get a reissue in a 2-pack where he does include a Kamehameha charge effect piece and a new head. So either version is good for your collection. As I said, he looks better than FIGUARTS in my opinion. The following wave had figures meant to tie in with the new Dragon Ball Super Broly film. So up first was the Gogeta Blue, who looks pretty good in the stock render, but the actual figure got the skin way too dark. But thankfully the articulation is pretty par on course for Dragon Stars, about on par with the Gohan body mold. Overall, though, it's not a bad figure, though it did just get re-released with a new Screaming Head, along with a charge effect piece and a blast effect, which is great, but I'd say the best version is the Comic-Con version, as that one has some nice and shiny paint on it, so I'd definitely recommend that one if you can track it down. The other character from the movie was Broly himself, obviously, or as the box calls him, Super Saiyan Broly Dragon Ball Super version. Now, the articulation is actually really good on the upper body, being about on par with the Build-A-Figure, maybe even slightly better. However, below is where things get bad, as the legs cannot move because the skirt piece is made out of a hard rubber. So yeah, unfortunately he does look nice, but you're not getting much of a figure out of this. As for the other figures in the wave, we got Super Saiyan 2 Gohan from the Cell Saga, and he looks really nice and will pair well with Cell, though there was a 2-pack with that Cell I mentioned earlier that does come with the Gohan with an angrier face. As for the articulation, it is surprisingly similar to the Goku and Gohan body mold that we've used all the time in this line by now. So yeah, this is a pretty good figure, but I'd actually recommend you buy the Power Up Pack version, as that one comes with lightning, a screaming face, and a charge effect piece, which looks very nice and adds a lot to this figure. After Gohan, we got another Cell Saga figure in Android 18. Now this figure's articulation is very similar to that of Broly's, having really good upper body movement, being some of the best in the line in fact, but her lower body movement is basically non-existent due to the plastic skirt getting in the way of the leg movement. So unfortunately her poses are a little limited, but you can still get some decent ones. And overall, I'd still recommend her, especially since her FIGUARTS counterpart is one of the most expensive ones in that line. And she still looks good next to Android 17, which is what really matters in this case. After that, we got a Blue Saga character in Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks, the first kid character in the line. As for the articulation, the head is very limited just due to the way the hair is sculpted, but the rest of the movement is really good, actually being some of the best in the line, especially in the legs, which they have no limitations despite being baggy pants. Overall, I'd say he's one of the best in the line, though he might be a little difficult to stand due to his hair. Though what I recommend you should do if you own the FIGUARTS version is buy this to get the Super Saiyan 3 head sculpt, as FIGUARTS never created one. However, the final figure in the way, which was the one that got everybody excited, as it was Kid Buu, or as the boss calls him, Majin Buu final form, a character FIGUARTS has never made. As for the articulation, the head is very good, and the rest of the body is very similar to that of Gotenks, but with the extra torso movement allowing for really good posability on this guy, being some of the best in the line. So yeah, you should definitely grab a Kid Buu, especially if you are a FIGUARTS collector, as they have not made one yet, and it's hard to say if they ever will at this point. The following wave begins with a huge bombshell, as Super Saiyan Goku has been completely remade from his original figure, sharing 0 parts, and that is done through the use of the Gohan body mold. But it's really good, so I'm happy they reused it again. So this figure is really good, but I'd recommend you grab the Power Pack version, as you get the charge effect piece along with the display base and the Kamehameha blast effect, making this figure a lot more fun to play with. Then we got a new Piccolo mold, which has a cape, which thankfully is removable because the figure's articulation is a little limited, but the cape removed, the figure is identical to the previous Piccolo, so I'm not going to show any new footage. If you get this, I'd recommend getting the Comic-Con version, as that has a better color scheme, but overall this is pretty skippable. To go with Piccolo, we also got Super Saiyan Gohan with the cape. The figure is identical to Super Saiyan 2 Gohan in terms of articulation, just with a new head and cape, so I'm not going to really mention it. All I'll say is slightly less skippable than Piccolo, and I recommend getting the Comic-Con pack so you can get them in their better colors. Then we got our first human figure in line, that being Krillin. The figure looks very accurate to how the character looks, and as for the articulation, it's very similar to that Goku body mold that we've seen all too many times, but with the way better hip movement than what that Goku body mold ever had. So yeah, the Krillin figure does look really nice, but unfortunately there is one massive fatal flaw. And massive is not an exaggeration, as this figure is huge compared to how he should be, which sadly makes this figure a lot less desirable. Then we got our second GT character in Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta, and he looks amazing, and this is our first Vegeta in a while. The articulation is really good, as to be expected by this point in the line, having really good range on all the joints, especially since Vegeta does not have baggy pants, so meaning that the joint movement is great. And yeah, this Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta is really good, and with him we have the 2 Super Saiyan 4s. But what happens when 2 becomes 1? Because yes, the next figure was Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, though I'm specifically talking about the Power Pack version that I own. Now the articulation is pretty similar to the normal Super Saiyan Blue Gogeta that we got recently, but this is actually a new mold, as the crotch is much longer, which means the legs have much more movement than before. And also you get this amazing accessory of the 100 times Big Bang Kamehameha, which makes this figure definitely worth grabbing, especially since FIGUARTS has not made one yet. The wave begins with a Super Saiyan Vegeta remake, which looks a lot better than the original ever did. And I'd say is one of the best looking figures in the line, because that looks really nice. As for the articulation, it is very similar to the original, which is good, because that original actually had good posability. And this one also follows suit with that. Now, I'd recommend the Power Pack version the most. That gives you an extra few pieces of accessories, which makes this figure a lot more fun to play with. The wave also gave us Super Saiyan Gogeta from Fusion Reborn, which does reuse the mold from the Super Saiyan Blue Gogeta, but does fix the skin tone. Sadly, there's not much else to really say, so all I'll say is if you want this, get the 2-pack version, as that looks a lot better. The face especially looks much cooler, and he has a Soul Punisher accessory. The next figure was Ultra Instinct Sign Goku, and you'll notice it's not very accurate to the source material. I haven't had to mention accuracy for a while, but this time it is inaccurate, and yeah, it's because it's a reuse of this body mold from Ultra Instinct. But eventually they did fix it, but it was part of a 2-pack with Jiren. This original release is kind of insulting, so just get the re-release in the 2-pack, because that does fix the problem. This wave also introduced a Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta in his standard armor, which just uses Super Saiyan Vegeta 2.0's body mold. So yeah, moving on. The wave then introduced Goku's dad, Bardock, and he looks great. The articulation is very similar to the Vegeta mold we just took a look at, though the legs are a lot more limited just due to the way the hip skirts are. Now this figure is very good as it is, but the better version is the one on the 2-pack with the first form Frieza. That one has the angry expression, and you get one of the best figures in the line in that 2-pack. However, it was the final figure that caused all the hype, and it was Cooler. This figure looks amazing. As for the articulation, it's really good. Though the elbows are a little limited, but beyond that, everything else works at its maximum, especially his tail, which has 3 different rotation segments. So yeah, Cooler is one of the best figures in the line, if not the best figure in the line. I definitely recommend you track one down. Sadly, the following wave has a lot less to say about it, as it's just body reuse, like Goku, and we also got Vegeta, and we got Gotenks. Now granted, these were necessary to add to the line, as the original Goku and Vegeta were not great, but still, not much to really say on them, as they are just reused bodies. Sadly, the reuse continues, as this wave also features Super Saiyan Vegeta, who did get a power pack that comes with a much nicer spirit sword than what the normal one would come with, and a charging effect. But yeah, not much to say on them either. And rounding out the wave of reuse, we have Super Saiyan Bardock, which is more interesting as he is a what-if character, but still. I wouldn't really recommend him unless you like the What If saga, in which case get him, and if you have a FIGUARTS version, do a head swap. However, the reuse ends with Janemba, the final figure of the wave. This figure looks really good, and the articulation is sadly kind of bad, especially in the lower legs, as the sculpt of the legs prohibits much movement between the legs, unfortunately. So, while posing can be a bit difficult, you can use what you got and make some creative ones, so I'd recommend them, especially if you get the 2-pack version that comes with the Gogeta. Now, following Janemba's release, there was significantly less figures per wave. This is due to the Anime Heroes line being introduced, which is basically Dragon Stars but for other anime. The first figure in this new shorter assortment is Blue Goku. Now, this figure is actually the first time on the mold that they painted both symbols, but beyond that, there's really nothing else to say. It looks good, but it's the same mold we've seen time and time again in this line. The other figure in the wave was Broly from Dragon Ball Super Broly. This figure is of his base form, not his Super Saiyan form, and they actually improved it a lot. The shoulder pads can move out of the way, meaning the arm movement is not limited, and best of all, the hips can work because the skirt is cut in 2 and made of soft plastic. Overall, this Broly figure shows the line's dedication to improving to be the best it can be. But then Master Roshi got added to the wave, and that was a very big shock. But this figure is another one FIGUARTS hasn't made, and he looks amazing. The articulation is really good, especially for a bulky character like him, being very similar to the Broly that we just looked at, if not even slightly better, I'd say, in the hips. But yeah, Master Roshi is definitely one to track down if you're a FIGUARTS collector, but I'd recommend the Comic-Con version for the brighter paint color, and you also get a pretty good Goku from the 2.0 body. There was also a base form Gogeta around this time, but I'm not sure if he's part of the wave or an exclusive. Following this, though, we got Saiyan Saga Vegeta. Now, this figure mostly reuses parts from the 2.0 Vegeta body mold, but that's okay, because that was a good mold. And the figure's pretty good here, though the legs are limited by the skirt pieces, but you can still get him into the iconic Saiyan Saga pose. So yeah, I definitely recommend this one, especially since the SH FIGUARTS Scatter Vegeta is very expensive. But of course, what's Scatter Vegeta without his partner Nappa? Now, the figure does look really nice, and the articulation is pretty similar to the Broly figure from a few waves ago, but that also means that the legs are bad. In this case, they are really loose, and the skirt piece completely makes the movement limited, but you can still get him into some decent poses overall. Though Vegeta is too tall to scale with this Nappa, which is something to keep in mind, but it still looks fine enough, so I'd recommend them. Following wave remade the final 2 figures from the first wave. It also introduced a new packaging style variant that will be used going forward, even for re-releases. Now, starting with Beerus, the figure does look very similar to the original, but they did actually change the head sculpt. Biggest improvement, though, is the articulation, which, while using the exact same body, the arms are new because they actually feature a bicep swivel, which helps immensely with the posability. But beyond that is the exact same. So yeah, definitely get this Beerus over the original. As for Frieza, the figure also looks very similar, but there is a different head, and sadly all shading of blue is gone. And this is no articulation change from the original, just a lot better tolerances, so the joints feel a lot tighter than they did on the original, which makes this figure really, really good. And so yeah, I definitely recommend him as an inexpensive alternative to the FIGUARTS version. However, following that wave, a new film came out, and we had a big wave to talk about, as this was the final time they made a full 6 figures for a wave. Despite barely making the movie, Goku got a brand new figure, introducing a 3.0 body technology, meaning even more movement. The first improvement is neck pivot, allowing the head to tilt side to side. Beyond that, we also have waist pivots, which allow the waist to twist side to side. But best of all, much more range in the hips, allowing for a lot better kicking motion on baggier pants figures. So yeah, this Goku is definitely the best Goku they made in the line. Vegeta would obviously follow suit, having a new body mold, this time being in the more of a Buu Saga-like outfit without his armor pieces. As for the articulation, it's very similar to the Goku with the improvements made, but because Vegeta has no baggy pants, the legs have even better movement. And this figure is also a little shorter than before, which makes him the ideal Vegeta for the Dragon Stars display. Piccolo was also in this wave, and he had a version with his cape on, but if you get the 2-pack version, he has it without the cape, which is the look I prefer, so I have that version. The mold is basically identical to the Goku body mold that we saw previously, with all the improvements that have been mentioned before, making it far superior to the previous Piccolo. So yeah, this is definitely the best Piccolo in the line. Get either version, depending on your preference. The final 3.0 remake is Gohan, or as Ultimate Gohan, as the box says, and it looks really great here. As for the articulation, it is identical to Piccolo, as these two basically share the exact same body mold. So nothing new there, but it's a good mold, so I don't care. And yeah, this Gohan is our best Gohan in the line so far. These 3.0s are really great. But of course, the wave ends with Gamma 1 and 2. Let's start with Gamma 1, who looks really nice and has his blaster, which is a cool accessory. As for the articulation, it is very similar to the Super Saiyan Broly, as well. The upper body is really good. The legs cannot move because of the skirt piece once again, but he can still pull off some pretty decent poses. And if you get the 2-pack version, you get an angry face, along with an exclusive Super Saiyan Gohan. As for Gamma 2, same figure pretty much, though I have the 2-pack version that came with the Piccolo because of the exclusive hands it comes with. As for the articulation, though, it is identical to his brother. There is very little difference. In fact, I don't think there's any. So yeah, both of them are pretty decent figures and much cheaper than their FIGUARTS counterparts, so you should definitely get them if you don't want to pay the FIGUART prices. However, a few months later we did get another figure in the superhero line, that being Beast Gohan. Now, the figure is exactly the same as the previous Gohan we just talked about from this lineup, but he does have a new special beam cannon hand, so I'd say to get one just because the FIGUARTS version was ridiculously priced for how much of a reused mold that was. However, Gohan's wave mate was what got everyone excited, as it was Omega Shenron, or as the box says, Super Yi Shenlong. As for the articulation, despite being very bulky, it still has all the improvements introduced in the superhero line, including the much better waist movement and unimpeded hip movement, making this figure one of the best figures in the lineup for me, especially. I highly recommend him, as FIGUARTS likely will not make an Omega Shenron anytime soon, so this is your best bet, and he's a great figure as a result. The following wave introduced Super Saiyan 2 Goku, but sadly uses the 2.0 body mold instead of the new 3.0 body mold. Unfortunately, there's not much else to really say, but it is cool to see this more obscure form in this toy line. After Goku, we of course got Majin Vegeta. Now this figure looks absolutely incredible and is actually a new mold, not a reuse of the superhero mold, though the articulation is basically identical to that mold, but he does actually have a slightly better waist movement. And now this figure does look amazing, so I absolutely recommend that you pick one up. A bit later, we got a Super Buu figure on his own, where the wave stopped officially. Now, this figure's articulation is absolutely amazing, having all the same improvements as before, but even adding in some new stuff, like way better knee joints that don't look ugly when you bend them. So yeah, this figure is definitely one to pick up if you're collecting this line. I highly recommend him as an inexpensive alternative to the FIGUARTS version. Then a few months later we were introduced to Super Baby 2, one of Dragon Ball GT's best characters. As for the articulation, it's very good, being similar to the 3.0 body molds, if not the exact same as like the new Vegeta, which is great. So yeah, you should definitely pick one up, because FIGUARTS has not made one yet, and I highly doubt they will, and in fact I'd say this is the best figure in the line, so if you only get one, you should get this one. A few months later we got this very weird one, as it's Beelzebub from the Sandland series, character that is not in Dragon Ball, though he does appear in the Dragon Ball Legends mobile game. As a figure itself, it does seem to be a pretty good representation of the character. However, I didn't pick it up because I have no connection to the character or the series they are from. But if you are a fan, it would be nice to grab. But personally, I think you should have been in the Anime Heroes toy line. Following Beelzebub, we started to get figures based on the new Dragon Ball series, Dragon Ball Daima. In the series, the Dragon Ball cast returned into very cute and very marketable children, which will make it a very interesting toy line approach, as the previous Dragon Stars line did not have any of the small children besides Gotenks. Up first is Goku Mini now. One thing you should know about me is that Kid Goku is my favorite character in all of Dragon Ball. So how did they do on this little figure of him? Well, he looks really nice and comes with a lot of extra stuff due to his small size. Even the articulation is pretty good, keeping all the improvements from the superhero wave, but with the smaller body. It is a little awkwarder to use, but legs fare a bit better just due to their chunkier size. And yeah, I'd definitely say this is a great pocket Kid Goku figure to grab if you're in the market for an affordable one. Part of the same wave assortment, Vegeta Mini was next. Now the figure looks very similar to the Goku in proportion. As for the articulation, it's about the same as Goku's, but a little bit better in the legs just due to how thin they are. But that also is the problem, as they feel a lot more fragile than Goku's. He includes a Big Bang attack charging effect piece, which is nice, but is a little too big for him to wield properly. But still, I'd still recommend him, as he does look really nice. And coming really soon is a Super Saiyan 4 Goku Daima version, beating FIGUARTS to the punch, and this figure looks absolutely amazing, so I definitely can't wait to grab him. Now, before we end this retrospective, let's quickly take a look at the remaining items in the line that I haven't mentioned yet. The biggest thing to mention is their only original Dragon Ball product, and that is the World Martial Arts Tournament, which does come with cool interchangeable destroyed parts, and depending on the version, an exclusive Goku, which is just a Wave 17 Goku with a screaming face. Now, sadly, the Dragon Star selection does not really offer any characters to go with this playset besides Goku and Piccolo, but if you have FIGUARTS, you can use the original Dragon Ball cast. And while they look a little big, it still works pretty well, and I highly recommend it as a very awesome display piece. As for other exclusive characters, there was a power pack which features the exclusive Super Saiyan Gotenks with 2 Kamikaze codes, so pair very nicely with Super Buu if you have one. There was also a Target exclusive Super Saiyan Goku from Dragon Ball Super Broly, which is the same figure as a superhero Goku but with a new head, and which also got a reissue with a blue hair and some power-up effects with the power-up pack. Super Saiyan Vegeta followed suit, but this is technically a new mold. Now, the articulation is similar to the other 3.0 figures, but like usual, Vegeta's more thin-type legs allow for much better movement down there than the Goku. And yeah, this is probably the best Vegeta in the line to get in his classic armored look. I'd highly recommend him. Also, like with Goku, he did also have the blue version available in the power-up pack. There was also a Walgreens exclusive Super Saiyan Gogeta from Dragon Ball Super Broly. It's the exact same figure as the blue Gogeta and the normal Gogeta, which means it still has the inaccurate skin tone. Last exclusive to mention is the GameStop exclusive Super Saiyan Battle Damage Goku, which just uses the Ultra Instinct body but with a new head. This figure was also repacked with the 2-pack with Broly, which is how I'd recommend you grab him if you wanted. The final exclusive is the rarest, it's the Saiyan Evolution Comic-Con exclusive pack, which comes with Blue Goku, Super Saiyan God Goku, and Base Form Goku in the Whis training outfit. As we saw, Base Form Goku in the Whis training outfit and Super Saiyan God Goku just aren't in this toy line, so this pack's demand is very high. And with that, we've officially covered every single thing in this toy line, except for like just standard 2 repacks. But is it actually better than FIGUARTS like the thumbnail suggests? No. The FIGUARTS figures are obviously far superior to what Dragon Stars has to offer, but this is the better toy line because everything is priced consistently, and that's something FIGUARTS does not have. FIGUARTS cannot charge you whatever price they want for a figure despite it not being worth it for some of the characters. So yeah, I highly recommend Dragon Stars as a cheap alternative to FIGUARTS. Even if you are collecting FIGUARTS, Dragon Stars can sometimes save you a lot of money in the long run. So what did you think of Dragon Stars? Please let me know in the comments down below, and thank you so much for watching the video.